I know there are times that I speak ill of or I otherwise criticize best practices in the landscaping, tree services, and excavation businesses. And there's a very good reason. Hi, I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. For your small farm, homestead, and estate, there is no shortage of people to tell you how to manage your land. There's no shortage of people who want to come out and do services, and there's no shortage of people who want to basically make suggestions on what you should or should not do with your property. And there's whole industries built around this: the landscaping industry, the excavation industry, the land management and services, home maintenance people down the line. So the problem is they're not working in a holistic manner. I recently did a short video that I'm probably going to have to blur out the people, but they're essentially aerating a hill, very steep hill, that has young grass on it. Now, the grass is covered with straw, and there's, of course, clover seed and other types of mixtures there. And it's very thick grass because the grass itself is a pasture blend rather than a lawn grass. Now, this is pretty far away from the house. This is past a chain link fence and kind of out towards the woods, and is eventually going to be reestablished as tree area because of the steepness of the slope. Well, I'm working in my office and I hear some kind of machine running, and I look outside and there's this little tiny like aerator with no weights on it or anything. It's just a little tiny aerator, and this guy is wrestling it around the yard, and he's on the slope and it falls over and it gets the tines tied up with straw, and he's frustrated and struggling. Meanwhile, the areas that I prepared are taking in clover right now. And clover is a precursor to grasses because it starts to cover the soil, prepare the nutrients in what we have as a very high clay, and it starts moving towards that grass. Yet the desires of my neighbor is to have grass right away. And I understand that because every landscaper has told him you need grass. Every landscaper, of course, tells you need grass because the more grass you have, the more they have to maintain, and the better they get paid. I want you to go beyond just what everybody's telling you to do and ask for the value of the land. And here's what I mean by that. I don't want grass. I want greater utility from the land. I don't want grass. I want greater ecological strength and resilience in that land. Right now it's rainy season, and he's aerating away on a slope, and in a season that we just got 5 inches of rain in a 72-hour period. Now, what do you think is going to happen when you till up an area or you aerate an area and it suddenly rains? Well, those little tiny holes are going to fill with water, and if you've seed it, it's going to wash away a lot of your seed if it's on a slope. Now, there's nothing wrong with aeration. Aeration is important to do this season for level, compacted areas. However, if the ground is mostly clay and we're establishing a grass area, then aerating it is actually counterproductive to the desired result of having grass. In fact, you shouldn't aerate. You can top dress it. You can aerate very shallow. You can do what's called pucking, where you're not digging those deeper holes. You're simply just rolling the grass, cut it short, roll it to break up the hardness in the soil, and then coming through with a top dressing and seed, then a light straw. See, these are methods that people have studied and they work for many years, yet some landscapers do them and some landscapers don't. A lot of times the company is working with the tools that they've got rather than the tools that they should have. This guy's got a little tiny aerator out there. If he really wants to do aeration, he would use a rotary plow to cut contour paths across the hill to establish areas where it's too steep to aerate, so you start planting in trees, to establish areas that could be leveled out a little bit more for access, where you can have a path or a walk through. And then, of course, if you're able to then drive across it because you've segmented out the areas, you could drive across the areas to drop manures, to drop compost, to drop the other top dressings necessary to get a good grass laid out. Now, if you want an immaculate lawn, I don't have anything wrong with that. I don't think there's a problem. But an immaculate lawn is for level areas. It's not for steep slopes. It's not for areas with heavy rain infiltration. It's not for areas with heavy clay. A lawn is for around the house, your zone 1, on level areas. You can also establish lawns at the edges of your pastures and lawns at the edges of your growing areas. But folks, there is a reason I'm pointing these things out, because it's not common sense to the majority of the population who either owns a homestead, small farm, or estate and is hiring people to come in, or to the landscaping companies themselves who advocate best practices that are applied incorrectly. So yes, it is best practice in this fall season, actually coming into the fall season before your frosts, it is best practice to aerate. But you aerate level areas. You aerate areas that are able to handle the water, that don't have running water because of the slope. Now, there's a reason I study the people who manage golf courses, who manage large estates, who manage historical properties, because these methods have been proven time and time again. There's a reason why they can cut that grass so short near the hole on a golf course versus the grass is longer out in the rough. That's because it's a different type of grass. And you're very often going to have different grasses for different areas. That's one of the reasons that I designed the year-round green with the highest possible blend of native grasses for your area. So what you're going to end up doing is building out these giant test plots, which you might call lawn, but you're going to identify which areas, what grass seeds have you put down, which low-lying clovers have you put down, and which stay in which areas. So now you can start identifying soil types. You can start identifying which shade area versus a heavy sun area. You can start identifying areas that are more grass, more green, less water, less green. And you can ultimately transform the property into a more ecologically sound, a more resource stable, and a better environmental approach. So instead of tearing out the entire yard and putting in one type of grass, you now have a polyculture, which is many types of grass. And so if you suddenly get an early frost, you don't have to worry about half your yard dying. If you suddenly get too much rain one year and not enough rain another year, you're not constantly going back and forth. Now, one thing you must understand, and we talk about this in my other programs, is that big box stores are programming you to work for them. Now, this sounds strange, but essentially, what does everybody do on the weekends? Well, they flood the big box stores and get their supplies to do their repairs and to do their work. That's high-income professionals and entrepreneurs and business owners that are working a second job for the big box store to go get materials and to go do the installs around their home. Now, they want beautiful homes. They want low maintenance. They want repairs to be taken care of, but they're doing it at the retail price. They're doing it at the highest cost possible. And then very often when you get the wrong vendors out, they apply what may be best practices in some conditions to everything because they just think the way it is. Now, I went upstairs to look out and see what they're doing. They have several big bags of fertilizer out there, and they have one bag of seed, and they have the aerator, and they're throwing the sticks that they're finding over there, because this is an area that was recently cleared. They're throwing those sticks into my yard. They're not throwing them into the brush pile that happens to be at the bottom of the hill that is equal distance from where they're throwing it into my yard versus throwing it into the brush pile. There are certain concepts that your vendors will just not understand. That's why I advocate that you become the general contractor. That's why I advocate you having a written plan. That's why I advocate you understanding the principles of permaculture, natural farming, and ecological design. Because there was one time when all of us were very familiar with agriculture. We didn't have as much technology. We didn't have as many distractions. So it would be normal for you to maybe graze sheep on a lawn and excluding the sheep from slopey areas, and then plant nitrogen-fixing trees to establish an orchard or something. That would have been normal. But today, we're so far removed from that, we don't understand. That's why you'll see them chain their dog up, and you'll see a giant bare spot in their yard, and then they'll complain why they can't grow any grass. Well, you've now concentrated an animal, which creates compaction on the soil, and you've concentrated all of their waste product into a very tight area, and then you've left the animal to be bored, which they will dig up the soil. It's just the way it works. So what I'm teaching you with Prosperity Homestead is a holistic approach that includes animal behavior, It includes biology. It includes the horticulture sciences of understanding soil types, for example. You don't aerate clay soil. Now, if you're going to immediately cover with topsoil, or you're going to if you got just clay soil, you really need to do more than just aerate and then dump stuff on it, because the bonding between the clay soil that's deprived of nutrients versus the soil you're layering over, you're just not going to get the results. That happens a lot of times with contractors when they do a spec build. A lot of times around the house, they'll put sod right over top of clay, and then all the sod will die, and you'll wonder what's going on. Where the method I'm using is actually using things that break up the clay, plants that break up the clay, and using layering techniques that add additional humus. And I think I'm saying humus like the food you eat, but it's basically organic material on the surface. Then introducing worms and other creatures to stir that material up for you while adding additional nutrients. And then ultimately what you end up with is, instead of maybe 2 or 3 inches of topsoil that's keeping your grass alive, you're ending up with 3 to 6 feet of root matter in the soil that's actually feeding your plants, and then 7 to 8 inches of topsoil that is developing in the top of the ground. But more importantly, because you have that root depth, using cover crops, using a variety of grasses or cereal grains, using wildflowers. You can make this beautiful using a mowing routine that allows the grass to grow some volume before you start mowing it. All these things together start building that soil that includes the entire soil food web, so you don't have to fertilize it, so you don't have to water it, and so you don't have to worry about some of the common problems that you'll find in lawns. It is guaranteed and selfishly fodder for the videos and things I'm producing for my clients, but ultimately it doesn't make any sense to till a hill or to aerate a hill in a rainy season, because you're just going to have problems. Now, you can aerate that same hill coming out of the rainy season if you're top dressing soil and adding seed, but you don't even have to do any of this stuff if you follow the systems that we're teaching you here. And these systems are a naturalistic approach that grows soil while building a biologically diverse environment that takes care of itself in most cases. You get the same natural beauty by the selection of the plants that you grow. So, for example, you can have a lawn, but the lawn's likely to be the path around the level area that is below the slope with a proper water channel cut in it so that you can reduce erosion. And then planting on that hill a lot of your nitrogen-fixing trees. There's flowering trees, there's fruit trees, there's other things that can be planted on that hill to stabilize the hill and also provide something beyond a job for a landscaper. Now, a lot of clients of mine are landscapers, tree services companies, excavators. I'm not trying to put them out of the job. I'm trying to upgrade them now from looking at this, can I mow your grass, to can we landscape and add beauty and increase the value of your property? Can we help you improve the aesthetics? Can we help you solve erosion problems and other problems associated with the minimum number of resources? And that's what Prosperity Homestead is about. If you have any questions about what we do, you can visit us at www.prosperityhomestead.org. Periodically, we do have the opportunity to provide consulting via telephone, and a lot of times with Google Maps and local pictures that you provide, we can help you solve land problems. And we teach you how to manage land projects so that you bring in the right contractors, the right inputs, the right resources, so that you get that beauty, you get that property value, you get that usability of your land, you get that relief and that aesthetic that drives the value of your small farm, homestead, or estate. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. Thanks for listening.